I go hiking, and I've done it since I was a little kid, I look around for the very first stick that fits about my height and is sturdy enough not to break. Does anybody else do that when you go hiking? Look for a stick? As I'm getting older, there's a purpose for it because it helps balance. But when I was first younger, what I liked the stick for is because I grew up in my early childhood in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and when we'd go out on weekends and camping, we'd go up into the Sandia Crest Mountains, which are the base of the Rocky Mountains. And in New Mexico, it was, at least in the 60s, well known for rattlesnakes. And a lot more than what, I know that there's rattlesnakes supposedly at Devil's Lake, but I've never come across one. I've been fortunate, and that's good with me. I don't care to. But when I was younger, I always thought if I had a stick and I heard a snake, I would put the stick out and they'd hit the stick before they get my leg. Well, you know, they're not real smart. They're just protecting themselves, if you know about rattles. And the reality is they probably would. The thing that moved, that was closest, is what they'd strike. So that was my logic. In the Jesus stories of the shepherd, which is very real to Jesus' time and all throughout the Old Testament, the shepherds carried staffs. Now, sometimes we see the hook, you know, and that would be to gather the sheep in if they get lost. But most of the time, they didn't have hooks. Realistically, they were using whatever sticks were out there. If they happened to be a little bit curved, that was good. You know, we just kind of made them more practical as we were able to with technology and that. But they would use a good stick because it would herd the sheep. But the other thing is it would be a protection against the animals because they literally had to protect their animals' lives. Sheep are a very, very dumb animal. I don't know, have anybody raised sheep here? You have. Would you agree with that, Rick? They just do their thing. But they do listen to the voice that has raised them. They're about the only voice you can get. And so you had to take care of them because they were so dumb, they never realized that when they wandered off, they were looking like lamb chops to a lot of the predators out there. And we've got predators. Even to this day, there are coyotes in the Conservancy. We have literally seen them coming and going, and they generally tend to manage to get the young sandhill cranes that are born down there, but the mothers and dads are able to get away, but they keep coming back. But we have predators. So the shepherd's job was to watch over his sheep and to protect them. And so Jesus gives us that vision. And the I am is significant because in the Old Testament, when Moses was a shepherd, you know, watching his father-in-law Jethro's sheep, it is at that burning bush that he's carrying that staff, and he's watching the sheep that God calls him. And if you remember the story, and you can read that in Genesis and Exodus about Moses, if you read that story, you find out that Moses says, after all the arguments, and he calls Moses to go free the people, and he argues with him, finally, Moses says to the burning bush, which he knows is God speaking, "Who do I tell them sent me?" And in that passage, God speaks and he says, "I am." I am is sending you. And the I am in the Hebrew is written, and I have to always think this, YHWH. Now, you can't say a word without vowels, can you? Try to say YHWH. What do? We call it Yahweh, right? You've heard Yahweh, but that's because we add an A and an E. W-A-H-W-E-H. Yahweh, that's the Hebrew spelling for God. But in the original text, it was written, and you can still find that in some of the modern translations now that go to it, the word Yahweh, YHWH, and the intent in that translation is Lord. And what God was saying to Moses is, I am. The God that is and was and always will be is the one who is sending you. So what does John do when he writes in his gospel throughout that? But in chapter 10 we hear, I am. I am. I'm God. I am also the gate. I am also the sacrificing shepherd that will die for my life. I am the voice of the shepherd that will lead you, and you will hear my voice and know that it is me. I am. In fact, the clarity is never more pronounced than in verse 30. If you look at it, and I encourage you to go back and read chapter 10 when you're at home in your Bible. In verse 30 it says, Jesus says, the Father and I are one. When children come to me and they look, and you point to that picture of Jesus and the sheep that's up there, Sharp, that was one of your little icons that you helped create, and you ask them who that is, you know what they'll say to you? God. And you in your mind, because you probably were raised like I was, would say, well, no, that's Jesus. But you see, we have taught them here in this church that Jesus and God are one and the same. And Jesus said he was, did he not? The Father and I are one. John tells us that in the beginning, God was, and the Word was with God. And the Word was God, and the Word became living. And that became Christ that we know. My prayer for you today is that you will hear the voice of God, that you are the sheep that listen, and in the busyness of all there is, and there is enough busyness to keep us so distracted that we can think that we're doing all the right things, and we can never remember to do what God needs us to do, that we will hear the voice of God, and that we will respond, and we will be good sheep that follow the Master, to be good shepherds that lead those sheep that God puts in our leadership role. So as good sheep, I'm going to encourage us to affirm our faith as we have learned from over the centuries. I'm always reminded that that Apostles' Creed that is